This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by EV Duty and their smart home charger, and by Ash Gregoire, with 30 dealers across North America and over 3,000 cars in stock.
A couple weeks ago, when I had my first experience with the Tesla, I joined the Tesla Motors community on Reddit, and I posted a photo of the 2016 Model S, and the majority of people there told me that if I was impressed by that car, that I should really try a modern Tesla, and here we are, we do have one. This is a 2018 Tesla Model 3 dual motor extended range. This is, I'd say, probably the more popular version sold here in Canada. A little bit more on the pricey end of the Model 3 lineup, but you get pretty much everything that you need out of a vehicle. Not necessarily what you want. The performance vehicle is the one that you really want, but you need something like this. Dual motor for all-wheel drive. Extended range was good for over 500 kilometers new. We're getting about 500 kilometers fully charged, and it's still pretty cold out. I mean, I'm filming this, it's 4 degrees Celsius, and the temperatures this week have been pretty much around 8 or 9. So the range on this is about 500 depending on your driving, which is still plenty. I mean, that's pretty much more than any other of the new vehicles we've tested as far as an electric car goes, and this has all-wheel drive. Now, the base MSRP for this car when it was new is $64,100 Canadian, which overall isn't too bad for an electric car. This is a compact executive sedan, so smaller than the Model S. This would fit in line with something like a BMW 3 Series or Mercedes C-Class. And if you're on the road and you see something that's just a little bit bigger but kind of looks the same, a little bit taller, that's the cousin vehicle of this, the Tesla Model Y. It is a compact crossover built on the same platform, essentially offering the same experience with just slightly different interior compartment sizing and obviously the exterior as well. So both of those vehicles, they're like cousins. This is the sedan, which personally I prefer. Now, it makes this really interesting compared to, say, the Model S that we drove, or pretty much any car that's on the market today, is how these vehicles are essentially delivered into the market. All Model 3s are shipped with the same hardware, except for the dual motor and battery packs, but the electronics on the vehicle are all there. It's just software locked. So if you don't get all the features, you don't pay for the complete Tesla experience, the hardware still exists, like the self-driving mode. You just can't use it unless you pay for it. And that's something that I've actually been bringing up in conversation quite a while now. When I talk about things like LED headlights, where I find that manufacturers are putting really cheap halogen lights on base model vehicles, and then they're putting out LED lights on higher trims. And I keep saying it's probably just cheaper to ship it with LED lights for everybody. That's more or less what Tesla's doing here. They're saying, listen, we're going to put all the cameras, all the sensors, all the hardware on all of these vehicles. And if you don't buy that, that's fine. The hardware's still there. So if down the road you decide you want it, you just pay us and we'll activate it. But then that way, you have a better experience for the buyer. Let's say you wanted a 2018, when it was new, black on black interior, but you didn't want the self-driving package. A traditional car maker would have maybe optioned it with it and said, well, listen, you have no choice. You got to take it, or we'll have to go find you one. But in this case, Tesla, in theory, just could have said, okay, we're just going to disable that tech. Here's your car. You want to pay us for the other stuff? Go right ahead, we'll activate it for you. And it's the same car. So, I mean, there are some serious pluses to it. I'm not going to get into that discussion today because it is somewhat of a slippery slope. There's two ways of looking at it, and I can see it from both perspectives, both from the consumer's perspective being a benefit and from the manufacturer's perspective, which doesn't necessarily mean the consumer benefits. But regardless, this is the way that it comes, and this is about the way that I would configure mine if I were in the market for it. Now, before we continue, I want to give a big thanks to Ash Gregoire for letting me feature this vehicle. It's very difficult for me to get my hands on vehicles like Tesla, and this gives me an opportunity to drive one for a full week as I would a normal press car. And if you're in the market for a used vehicle, or even something like this Tesla Model 3, you can head over to promo.ashgregoire.com/Niall, that's my name, and you can save $200 off the purchase of your next vehicle. Ash Gregoire has 30 dealerships across North America with over 3,000 cars in stock, whether you're looking for a used vehicle like this Tesla or a new car, as they have a number of new car dealerships as well. So again, save $200 on your next purchase. Visit promo.ashgregoire.com/Niall. And again, big thanks to them. Now, as we mentioned with the Model S, the specs for the motors are a little hard to come by. The information that I have is 258 kilowatts combined, or 346 horsepower, and 510 newton meters, or 376 pound-feet of torque, which is really good for a small vehicle like this. If you go with the performance version, the hardware is the same. You still have the same dual motor setup and the same battery pack, but you get more performance. And this is supposed to do 0 to 100 kilometers in 4.4 seconds, which is already very quick. But because this is more or less a computer on wheels, you can pay to upgrade to a new sport mode that's available. The hardware is the same, they just allow the accelerator to give you a little bit more power, and you can do 0 to 100 kilometers in 3.9 seconds. Now, this vehicle doesn't have that upgrade, which is fine. Even at 4.4 seconds, this thing is plenty fast. I'm sure it is actually quicker than what Tesla says it'll do on paper, because the point of this isn't to go really fast. It's nice to do it. It's really fun. I won't lie to you. I enjoy it, but the point is to have an electric vehicle that you can use to save on fuel. You're using electricity. And if you buy into the Tesla ecosystem, you're going to have a great experience as well. Now, there's a couple things, when I say a couple, I mean a lot of things that are different between this and the Model S that we drove. The biggest technology feature on this is what Tesla calls autopilot with Navigate 2. It uses 8 outboard cameras, 1 radar system, 12 ultrasonic sensors, and Tesla's proprietary AI computer to help drive this car on its own without real user input. You set a destination, you say navigate with autopilot, and it'll just take you there. Now, it is a little nerve-wracking the first time you use it, and here in Quebec, where the roads aren't necessarily the greatest, it's not the most fluid experience. I could see in California, where this vehicle is designed, that it makes more sense. The roads there are nice, they've got actual lines on the roads, whereas here in Quebec, it's a little questionable. But the idea is the car can do it for you if you want. You don't have to use it if you don't want to, but this one has that upgrade, which allows me to test it out. Now, I said that there were 8 cameras, and it's true. There's 8 of them on the vehicle, 3 in the front windshield, 2 on the front fenders where the turn signals are, 2 more on the B-pillars, and then 1 in the back. There's a 9th camera on the inside in the cabin area, just above your rear view mirror. And at this point, Tesla is not using it, which is, again, a very interesting thing when you think about how car makers build vehicles. They usually put features in that are used, but Tesla isn't using that yet. They say it's for a future update. They've put it in so that they can use it if they want to. So cool stuff there. Maybe it could be an interior dash cam camera, so we'll see. But the cameras all do different things. There is no 360-degree view when you're backing up with this vehicle. You just have a regular backup camera, but some of the cameras are used exclusively for the autopilot system, and the others are used for Tesla's Sentry system, which will alert you if somebody is peering into your car, might be thinking of breaking into it, as well as the built-in dash camera, which records everything as you're driving along. I just want to mention, I find that the front trunk works better on this. It's a little bit more flush to the vehicle, and I found that there's a little bit more space in there. Plus, when you push it down, you don't have to slam it like you do a regular hood. This one actually, when you push it in, it'll kind of pull itself in. Not quite like a self-closing motor, but very close. The real trunk is also pretty usable. There's a large storage bin and plenty of space. Again, if you're buying this because you want a compact executive sedan, you're not going to have any problems. The access to the charging port I find is a little bit easier. Before, you really had to go into the software to open it. Now there is a soft touch area. If you push it in, it will pop open. And same thing to close it. You can do it from there, which is nice, makes my life a little bit easier. And the door handles have changed. The ones that we saw on the Model S were motorized. They would pop out. These ones, they are flush with the vehicle. You just stick your thumb in and use the rest of your fingers to pull the door handle out. Again, might be something of a learning curve for some people, but once you get used to it, it's fine. Finally, this vehicle comes with an NFC key card. Now, you can buy a physical, or physical in the sense, key to be able to get into the vehicle, but Tesla uses their NFC key card. You swipe it on the B pillar to unlock and lock the vehicle, and then you put it on the center console in order to start the vehicle up. Now, personally, I would prefer to use the low power Bluetooth system. I don't have the Tesla app because this is not my vehicle. I imagine that experience would be better. In this case, it works, but it's not my favorite. And it's interesting that Tesla would go with an NFC key card when a lot of people, I suspect a lot of people who bought and drove Teslas, were using things like Apple Pay. They wouldn't necessarily be carrying around a wallet anymore. So it is interesting that they went with that at this time frame. 10 years ago, I mean, the Mercedes S-Class in the early 2000s used an NFC key card to get into the vehicle and start it. So it's interesting that they're using it now. Again, the experience might be a little bit better with Bluetooth. But that's enough about me on the outside here. I've been standing here for quite a while. Let's jump inside. I want to show you what's different about the interior on the Tesla Model 3, why it's such an interesting car for me to drive, and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for a 2018 Tesla Model 3 dual motor extended range. So as mentioned, to start the car, you got to put your NFC key card in the center area, just where the cup holders are, and then you put your foot on the brake. The interior here is night and day compared to what we saw on the Model S. Now, I just want to talk about how the interior space differs. First of all, obviously it's a slightly different vehicle. This is technically smaller when it comes to a executive vehicle. This is a compact executive one. I find that the space in here is better than it was on the Model S. First of all, I have better headroom with the almost full glass roof here. You certainly do, but I find that I sit better in this vehicle. With the Model S, I felt I was just sitting a little too high up. If the seats went down a little bit more, I would have been happy. With this, though, I have a good seating position as a big guy. I fit well, and I have good visibility throughout. There's much more control for the seats, and I also feel like I have a little bit more space in this vehicle. Backseat space too. I mean, in the Model S, just the way that the silhouette of it was set up, it was difficult to get your head in if you're a taller person. Kids, no problem. I find with this, again, better to get into. So if I were in the market, as much as I like the idea of having a Model S, the bigger vehicle, this is probably the way to go. Let's talk about the tech. We have a 15.4-inch infotainment system in the middle, and that controls everything. There is no gauge cluster screen. There's no head-up display. Everything is through the infotainment. So it's an interesting setup. It's a landscape over the portrait that we saw before, but there are some major differences with this. First of all, it is way faster than it was on the Model S, like noticeably. Immediately when you get it, you'll realize just how much faster the processor power is on this system. Everything is controlled through here. There are even less buttons. If you thought that there weren't enough buttons on the Model S, well, you're in bad luck this time, because there's even fewer now. To control the steering wheel and the mirrors, you need to use the infotainment system, and it'll allow you to use the little nipples on the steering wheel in order to adjust those for you. So different experience there. However, Tesla has moved away from using those Mercedes parts that we saw before, window switches and the gear levers and everything. Those are all more or less proprietary to Tesla. Different setup here now. They've added a couple toys in the entertainment system and a couple extras in the toy box as well. And because the layout is different, there's just a slightly different UI over what we had before. But again, everything is still controlled through that infotainment system, which is great. Now, a couple other things to note too is there's no vents, or at least there's no vent controls on the dashboard of this vehicle. In order to adjust the two main vents for the front passengers, again, you go into the infotainment, you point, and you kind of move the selector around to get the vents in the position that you want. It's a little over-engineered. I mean, it works, but again, you're adding these features. Was it a problem before to just adjust it manually? Maybe. But the point is, it's different. If it's your first time getting in here, keep that in mind. Dual zone climate control up front. All 5 seats have heat, which is something that we saw in the Model S. Again, something that we never see anywhere else. Usually the center seat is left out. And there's a cup holder back there now. If you do have passengers in the back seat, they can fold the center down and have an armrest with a cup holder. That's kind of basic stuff to have, especially at this price point. So it's nice that it is on this, where it was not on the Model S that we drove. This Model 3 is using a 14-speaker audio system. It's not a brand, but I find that the audio quality is pretty similar to Harman Kardon, which is what we find is sort of the industry leader in the premium space for in-car audio. And like with the Model S, we have location-aware HomeLink. You can set it up so that as you're approaching your HomeLink devices, they will automatically open up. Now, I mentioned the Sentry Mode and DashCam. Those are controlled through here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but they do work. You just need to format a USB drive, stick it into one of the 2 ports in the front, and you can have those videos record. You have to record, the Sentry Mode is going all the time. If you set it up, you can have it disabled when you're at home or work or special locations where you know you don't need it. That will record any instances that come up. But the DashCam itself, it's recording all the time, but kind of like, if you're like me, you play Xbox, you want to save a clip, you have to actually go in and do it. So you just push the button, it will save that clip, and it'll use those 4 cameras, the one on the front, 2 side, and 1 on the back to show whatever was going on at the time. So some interesting stuff in there. Center console, that's completely different from the Model S that we drove. It is functional now. Before, it was just an open area. This is an actual center console. The top portion closest to the infotainment is for your phone or your wallet, whatever it may be. There's USB pass-through on the little thing that comes out. It's a little tray, so you can have your wire go into it, and then that way it's a little easier to dock your phone. In the newest one, the 2021 Model 3s, they do have wireless phone charging, but with this, you still need USB. You can move that tray out of the way to get to the USB ports, as well as the storage bin in the center here. The second panel can also be moved out of the way. That just gets easier access into that storage bin. So if you want to put some valuables that you don't want necessarily to be visible while you're parked somewhere, toss them in there. Cup holders on this car are functional. There's no grips for them. It's something that we usually like to see. So you do have to hold on to your cup as you're driving along, but it is an improvement over the Model S, which they were positioned essentially where your elbow would be for the armrest. So better position for that. And then the last portion here, your armrest, much nicer armrest than was on the Model S. There is storage in there as well with a tray. So tons of storage in this vehicle that's hidden away. Your glove box controlled through the infotainment system. You can put things in there. Great places there. And the car is pretty minimalistic on the inside. A couple other things to note. The rear seats, there are 2 vents back there, manual control. They're not controlled through the infotainment screen, with 2 USB ports. And to get out of the car, it's a button. There's no door handle. You just push the button, doors will pop open. Now, it's a bit gloomy today. I guess it's a good thing that the moonroof here is fixed. It does not open, and you also can't close a shade. It just is the way that it is. I need a little bit more light as we go on our road test, which we're going to do now. I want to go over everything else about this as we're driving along, so that if you're in the market for a used Tesla Model 3, you'll be better informed.
There really is a night and day difference between this and the Model S that I drove, and I definitely understand why I see so many of these on the road. This and the Model Y are just crazy popular here in Quebec, and now it makes sense. Now I get it. I find there's more space in here. I'm much more comfortable being in this, and just overall, I mean, like, it's a good experience for what you want out of a car, let alone an electric car. Once you add on the electric car stuff, holy, it just takes things to another level. So I can definitely get it now that I've driven this. And it's great that I've done back-to-back Teslas, because it gives me that sense of how they really do differ. On the road, the actual drive and ride of them are very similar. You know, if you were to drive this back-to-back, you'd say, yeah, they're pretty close, both in terms of the overall ride. You know, it's a heavy car, just like the Model S, so you feel planted to the ground. You take corners, it grips well. We're on summer tires here, which is also nice. It does not have the sport mode, but the steering does have sport, comfort, and normal. I like it in sport mode. Feels very heavy, which is good. I mean, it feels like when we drove that 2013 Mercedes GL350, I mean, it's just this heavy feel to it, which is great. But, I mean, they've really refined this vehicle from the Model S that we drove to be so good on the road, and it definitely shows. And as we're driving along here, I could talk about a lot of the stuff like the navigation and the autopilot built into it that will just take you to your destination. I have tested it. It's a little nerve-wracking when you first try it out. The idea is when you put in a destination, you can just have the car drive you there, which is essentially the whole selling feature of Tesla's technology here. And it works. It's a little scary though. So depending on where you're going, I find that the destination makes a difference. But the idea is you've got that feature there. The rest of it, if you just use the normal, autopilot where it keeps in the middle of the lane, you can do lane changing with it. You just click your turn signal and it goes. All that works very well. So this is a very tech-forward vehicle, just like the Model S. And it feels that way, and it feels so much more advanced than that Model S because of all the extra tech, like the DashCam, the Sentry Mode. We've got a much faster computer processor here to be able to control things. And yeah, there is essentially nothing in this car. You've just got a dashboard and the console in the middle here. So it's a very different experience that I've driven from other vehicles, and it does feel different from that Model S, but man, I like it. I really, really like it. And the performance is good too. Like just off the, turn here, oh, buddy, we're up to speed so fast. And that was like maybe 50% throttle, not even close to like wide open. And obviously we're not in the sport mode. You can pay to have that upgrade. But as I mentioned, I think the people who are buying this, unless you really want to just have it, the fact is this is more than enough to get you up to speed. I mean, passing people, it's a joke. It's so effortless. Like, there's literally no effort to it. If you need to get in front of somebody, you just put your foot down a little bit and you're already gone. It's nuts. I mean, this is truly spectacular. I'm very curious, though, to see how the performance model is. That's the thing. Like, I'm driving this. This is the one that I would buy personally, because I don't need to have the performance, but I would like to have a little taste, just enough, just to get my lips wet so that I know what I'm experiencing. The great thing about doing a 0 to 100 kilometer test with a Tesla, any electric car, is there's no sound, so I don't have to wake up the neighborhood and alert anybody. Clearly I'm on a closed course though. So we are from a dig. Let's go. Oh buddy. And 100. Whoa. Now it was wasn't exciting right off the line. I get that. And maybe because I was trying to do launch control, which this car obviously doesn't have. We'll do another pass on the way back, but the idea is you get up to speed really quick. With the sport mode, it's going to be bonkers, and then if you have a performance model, even more so. But this is meant for day-to-day driving. Day-to-day, you don't need to get off the line in the split of a second, so I get it. But we are in normal mode, we're not in chill, so let's take it for another pass just to see how it does part 2. No fancy footwork here. I mean, technically I've got the brake hold on anyway, so I'm just going to gun it. Holy crap! Ah, that's too quick. Oh, the 100. I can feel, like, when I do that, I feel my organs going into the back of the seat. I feel my brain smashing into the back of my skull. Like, it is unreal when I do that. It is just, it's a feeling that, I mean, I love it. Once you feel it for the first time, I mean, it's probably a shock. I actually really love doing it when my wife and kid are in the car, because they won't expect it. I'll just kind of gun it, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, buddy!" But like, take it around a corner, and then, oh yeah, it's just so fast. Now the thing is, on the Tesla subreddit, somebody mentioned that it's one thing to explain to you how these cars work and explain why you would want to drive one, but the difference is really once you take the keys in your hand and you get to experience it yourself. And that's what I've been so lucky to be able to do here. Now I finally get it. Because on paper you think, okay, like, yeah, it's fast. Yeah, there's tech on it. Yes, you can have this semi-autonomous autopilot mode. It's all cool, but when you actually get to try it is when you realize just how incredible it all is together. And I'm telling you that there is no way that you can get bored of the feeling of just instant getting smashed into the back of your seat as you throttle it to the max. I mean, this thing is just nuts, and it's so silent. And that's the great thing. I could just be ripping it around town here early morning on a Sunday. The police will never find me, because they'll never know I'm doing it in the first place. That's what's great. But everything else about it works so well. The ride is good. It's comparable to other vehicles that we've tested in the size segment, at least, you know, BMW 3 Series or Mercedes C-Class, the non-performance versions. This is smooth enough on the road. It's a heavy vehicle, so I mean, you're weighed down a little bit, but you don't feel that too much. It's hard to explain without actually being in it, but the ride is good. It's quiet enough in here. Could be a little bit better, but not bad overall. The comfort is great. I like these seats. I like the space in here. It works for what I want out of a vehicle. This has really sort of perfected what the Tesla needs to be. That's why I'm excited to try out, say, the new Model S, because in theory it should be the same experience as this now, the modern Tesla experience, with a little bit more room, which would be great for me. But I mean, this is just ticked the boxes off, exceeded the expectations that I had as a vehicle, and I'm very impressed with it. This is a 2018. It is holding up very well. That's the one thing that a lot of people talked about with the early Model 3s, that the build quality wasn't quite there. They were a little cheap. I don't see that with this. This one, everything lines up properly. No rattling, no squeaking, nothing. It's got about 37,000 kilometers on it, which is, yeah, it's young for a car that's a 2018, but still, everything works well. This is impressive. If you're in the market for an electric car, you can buy an electric car, or you can buy a Tesla. Now let's go back to the studio. We'll talk about some of the things that you should look out for if you're in the market for it. We'll go over a buyer's guide to give you some ideas of what to watch for and some of the details about the Model 3 in general.
Well, the first winter that we had here in Quebec was not enough because we've got second winter here. Unfortunately, I could not do any winter testing with this vehicle. It's on summer tires. So over the past couple of days that it's actually been snowing here at the end of April, it's been in the garage. But I want to talk quickly about some of the things to look out for if you're in the market for a used Tesla Model 3. Now, there was a lot of news when this vehicle was first launched that there were build quality issues, a lot of complaints about maybe scratches on the paint not being actually that good, body panels not lining up properly. There were some problems at the beginning, there's no doubt about it, but it seems to have been sorted out by the later 2018 production runs, and then moving on to the other production years seems to have more or less been solved. When I look at the reviews, not from journalists, but from actual owners, reliability surveys, ownership surveys, things like that, while there were some initial issues, it seems for the most part that they've either been fixed by Tesla if they had it with that specific car, or the vehicles produced after have been much better. So it's important to take a look at the vehicle. You want to go over, make sure all the body panels line up, everything looks good. There's no leaking. There's some issues about leaking in the trunk or in the frunk. Just take a look at the vehicle. We always recommend doing a thorough inspection before taking a look at any vehicle you want to purchase. Take it to a trusted mechanic. Again, if you've got an electric mechanic, that would be amazing, but have the vehicle looked over because you never know, there could be some small issues, but honestly, I can't find too much and nothing that's a huge red flag. There could be rust issues depending on where you are buying your car. Here in Quebec, maybe, but this vehicle is in great shape. There's no issues whatsoever. So take a look underneath the vehicle, but sometimes there could be some rust issues along the doors, inside the door area where you wouldn't actually see it unless you were opening up the door, and inside some of the trim pieces, again, like the trunk area, frunk, basically the interior portion of the metal outside. So take a thorough look, make sure it's all good. And there have been some reports of, camera issues or the actual infotainment system not working down the road. Again, those are pretty localized problems. They don't seem to be widespread. And that would be something that you'd be able to tell right away if you take it on a road test and the screen doesn't work. I mean, all the functionality is in that screen. So take a look at those things. But for the most part, you should be in good shape. Now, the Model 3 came in a couple different configurations. The standard range rear-wheel drive was basically the entry model, and there were some interior controls that were locked out from software. So if you're looking at a standard range, you can upgrade it, or at least most of them should be able to be upgraded to a standard range plus. You have to pay Tesla and they'll unlock those features for you. Our long-range all-wheel drive, as well as the performance version of the long-range all-wheel drive, give you the best range and overall performance out of the vehicles. So those are the top end ones for the Model 3. Tesla did offer a mid-range model, but they've dropped that for the newer vehicles. So there could be a couple options out there. It's very easy to tell which one it is. Just go into the software and it will actually give you a pretty detailed report of the actual vehicle, whether it's a long range, standard range, which kind of motors are in it. Everything is in the infotainment system, so you can check that out. And because there's such a large Tesla community out there, if you got questions, just find one and ask in there. There's Reddit, Facebook, I'm sure there's a bunch of other places, including dedicated forums for Tesla ownership. Now, I want to give a big thanks again to Ash Gregoire for letting me feature their 2018 Tesla Model 3 long-range dual motor. Again, if you want to save $200 on the next purchase of one of their vehicles, head over to promo.ashgregoire.com/Niall, that's my name, and you'll be able to save $200 off your next used car purchase. If you have any questions about this video, as always, please leave a comment below. Remember to thumbs up the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Until next time, thanks for watching, and take care.